call the executive committee meeting to order. We need 10 folks, and as soon as we get 10 bodies, we're gonna rock pretty fast. There we go.
Jerry's in the hallway.
We're getting there. I do want to just say a few words about the agenda for the folks that are here. I am incredibly proud of what this committee accomplished last Congress in a veteran-centric and bipartisan manner, including the passage of the PACT Act. But we're not finished yet. As an oversight entity, we need to ensure that prior legislation is implemented as we intended it, and that the VA has the tools it needs to deliver the new benefits as well as the old benefits in a timely manner. Where we can, I'm going to move quickly to address any shortcomings in authority that prevents veterans from timely access for the health care and the benefits that they have earned. Today's markup is an example of that. It represents a list of priority bills agreed upon by Senator Moran and myself. Every single bill on this agenda had an opportunity for scrutiny through a solicitation of views from both administration and advocates, and in most cases, these bills have been introduced over multiple Congresses. We also have preliminary CBO estimates for all the items on today's agenda, and I hope this committee will move forward aggressively, yet deliberatively, to ensure that the vets get the benefits that they've been promised and that they've earned as quickly and as efficiently as possible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're getting close.
What do you need?
We need 10.
I'm going to open it up to other comments if you'd like to say
I will. So we've got, we need one more past Jerry.
Senator.
To put a tie on? No. Perfectly.
Other people have comments to make, so maybe open to that.
I would open it up at this time if other people have comments. Even Tuberville? Just kidding. If you have any comments, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to respectfully ask for a roll call vote on S10 only. S10.
Okay.
Thank you.
That is perfect. That's perfect. Now we need one more, Senator.
I heard I was insufficient.
If we have one more, then we're ready to rock. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I've got a finance committee meeting I need to check in. I'm also going to be questioning the nominee. But, Mr. Chairman, I understand on S10 in particular that we're going to talk about work that we need to get done. And with those sort of commitments, I'm prepared to support moving forward with it. But I do believe that there's a process that needs to follow, which also includes maybe a markup in this committee or discussion in this committee, and I hope that we can get that commitment.
Yeah, commitment done, and absolutely unequivocally important. This is, these are big issues, and it's a different way of doing business. Someone?
Sorry, very briefly. I am supporting all these bills, but I wanted to particularly note S106, which is the Senator Baldwin bill, and S175, which is a Rounds bill, and I just want to commend the introducers for making sure that Native Hawaiian issues are addressed in both of these bills. I thank them for that.
You bet. Other comments? Oh, my God. I did my opening statement. Would you like to give yours? Huh?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Chairman,
Moran.
Chairman Tester, thank you. I'm pleased to start the 118th Congress and get to work with you and our committee. We have been able to pass significant legislation last year. Now is our job to see that the VA faithfully implements the laws that we passed as Congress intended and consider further legislation to improve the lives of service members and veterans. I also want to note the spirit of cooperation that continues to drive our committee's work. We are all here to help secure the best outcomes possible for our veterans. As we do our work in this committee, we must make certain we are receiving the best input possible from the VSOs, from the VA, and other federal agencies and our stakeholders. To that end, I am glad the chairman has renewed our agreement from last Congress to always have at least a preliminary estimate of costs from CBO for any legislation this committee is voting on. The preliminary cost estimates for today's agenda make clear that several items will require more input from CBO and more work to address the costs before full consideration by the Senate. Veterans and taxpayers are counting on us to make good use of their money. We all have to do our part to achieve fiscal responsibility. That is why the version of my bill, the Elizabeth Dole Home Care Act, that we are marking up today does not include provisions to raise expenditure cap for non-institutional alternatives to nursing home care. While this is a policy I continue to support, I wish we could pass it. It carries a CBO score of several $billion, which we are not prepared today to offset. I look forward to working with my co-sponsors, Senator Tester and Senator Hassan, to find a fiscally sound way to move this important provision forward. I'm also grateful to Senator Tester for working with me on the bill I introduced called the RESPECT Act. This bill was born out of conversations I had with Kansans who were caring for veterans in need and deserve more support themselves. The RESPECT Act would allow these caregivers to seek mental health support outside the VA in settings where, they've told me, they feel much more comfortable. It also improves the VA's family caregiver program for veterans with neurological disorders, mental health issues, and are at risk for suicide. Chairman Tester and Senator Bozeman worked with me on their VA Careers Act, and I'm pleased we could build on the VA's proposals to add common sense guardrails on the increased pay authorities they are seeking for doctors and medical center directors. I'm tired of complimenting you. I appreciate, who wrote this?
I'm starting to blush myself.
I appreciate that Chairman Tester has committed to hold another hearing on the additional flexibilities the VA has asked for. More public discussion and more stakeholder feedback will help improve these proposals. But I also want the VA to better explain why it cannot properly implement the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act. If VA is going to have the flexibility they need to hire the best people, they need the same flexibility to let employees go when they are not a good fit. Finally, I want to note our ongoing work with Senator Brown on his transition and suicide reduction bill. Reducing veteran suicide by improving transitions out of the military remains one of my top priorities, but I do not believe this bill, as written, fully addresses the problem the DOD Inspector General identified with the lack of necessary mental health screenings prior to discharge and no warm handoff between DOD and the VA for those who need mental health care. We've heard it time and time again about the failure of the DOD to hand off its service members to the VA as they become veterans. Additionally, this bill would add yet another requirement for the transition period when DOD still isn't correctly implementing changes required in the 2019 NDAA. Chairman Tester has committed that we'll work with DOD and the Senate Armed Services Committee to amend the bill so that it is better addresses these problems for our service members before it is considered by the full Senate. And I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Moran. I appreciate all the compliments very much.
Will be edited.
Next time you'll pre-approve. Anybody else have a comment?
I'll give you some more compliments. We do appreciate y'all's work on this. Careers Act, I think, has been being worked on by really everyone in this committee for the last couple of years to finally come forward. One of the problems that we've got is in recruiting, and I think that's especially true in our rural areas. As I go around the country, whether it's rural Arkansas or rural wherever, it's simply difficult to get any sort of healthcare professionals, much less at the VA. So this is something that's important. The other issue that is part of this is a thing that we came up called the Vacant Act. And in Fayetteville, Arkansas, we went more than 18 months without a director. Leadership makes a difference. And so as a result, what this would do is say, look, within 180 days, you need to get somebody in there permanent that can get the job. They need to prioritize making sure that we do have good leadership. We've got some room to work on these things. They're not perfect right now, so I appreciate your all's willingness also as we, kind of move forward. But again, agree as we, work to get these things in even better shape so that we can get them passed and continue to do great things for veterans.
Absolutely, Senator Bozeman. We appreciate your work on this. And look, everybody on this committee's been great, and for the good of the order, you probably noticed Senator King has been added to the list. Otherwise, everybody else is the same. And in that regard of transition that was brought up between the active military and the VA, that is something that Senator King has expressed to me as a high priority for him, too. So he'll fit right in. I don't know if we're gonna get anybody else. Do you guys know of anybody else that's coming?
Senator Blumenthal should be on his way, but what we could do is you could ask all these members to stay and ask for a UC to recess and then start the nomination hearing.
Well, when's
until he gets
Blumenthal gonna be here? Because Bozeman has to get to a committee, she has to get to a committee.
there. Let's go
Tillman.
ahead and recess and start the nomination hearing.
Okay, so is Blumenthal coming? When?
We don't know.
Okay, so, yeah, everybody at once. Because truth is Senator Bozeman's already talked to me. I think, Tillis, you've got something going on. I think you've got. So I think we're gonna have to probably can the executive session for a later date.
Plan for a off the floor at 11:30.
Oh, can we do that? We'll do an off the floor at 11:30?
Yeah.
Executive session? Okay, let's move on to the general business meeting then. Our executive is adjourned. Okay. So I'll call this hearing to order to examine the qualifications of the President's nominee to serve as Undersecretary of Benefits to order. Mr. Jacobs, I want to acknowledge your experience supporting veterans both in the VA as well as here in the Senate, and specifically during your tenure with this committee. Our purpose today is to determine whether you are the right person to head and to lead the Veterans Benefit Administration. That said, we know you've been performing many of the duties since July of last year. I expect some of us will want to know what you've learned and what you've accomplished during that time. As we start the 118th Congress, VBA faces several challenges, including a backlog of more than 194,000 disability compensation claims, a number expected to grow as more veterans seek benefits through the PACT Act. Whether it's through a carefully crafted automation system or a form of a complex disability examination program, VBA needs a leader that protects veterans at every stop in the process. And while compensation will inevitably take up a fair amount of time of your attention, we need a leader who will not lose sight of the other critical benefits and services from VBA, including life insurance and home loan support. If confirmed, we're also counting on you to provide focused oversight of education and employment programs to ensure veterans, transitioning service members, and their families have all the tools they need to succeed in a civilian life. I'm hoping your answers to members' inquiries on these matters and others will help this committee make the determination of whether you are the right person to be confirmed as Undersecretary for Benefits. I very much look forward to a dialogue today, and I want to thank you for your willingness to serve in this very important role. With that, I will turn it over to Senator Moran for his opening statement, which I hope includes a lot of compliments.
I suppose, again, Mr. Chairman, I can start by saying thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's written in my remarks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and thank you for our witness today for joining us. Thank you for the conversations that we had earlier this week. Mr. Jacobs, you have been nominated to lead the Veterans Benefit Administration and to make certain our veterans get their rights, the right benefits at the right time. The VBA is critical to the well-being of veterans and the dependents it serves. Disability payments provide financial security to veterans who are unable to work due to service-connected injuries, and survivors' benefits to help families mitigate the financial challenges of losing a loved one. Readjustment benefits like the GI Bill and the VA Home Loan Guarantee provide transformational opportunities for veterans to achieve economic success in their careers and in the communities that they serve. VBA is in the midst of implementing the Robinson PACT Act to make certain veterans impacted by toxic exposure have a disability claim process that works well for them as it does for any other veteran with a service-connected disability. I'm sure you will recall that a lot of the conversation in this committee is how do we pass the PACT Act and not disadvantage those veterans who are already in the queue. As you implement this law, it is imperative that the other services and benefits that the VBA is charged with administering do not fall short. When these benefits are made available to veterans, they often make consequential choices, counting on the VA's assurance that these benefits will be available to them. Unfortunately, we've seen instances where the VBA has failed to deliver the benefits a veteran deserved or erroneously awarded a benefit that a veteran came to rely on, but then was determined could not have. In some cases, the claim decision has taken so long that the benefits became meaningless or the veteran had already passed away. The failure to deliver the right benefit at the right time can have a serious impact on the veteran, just as much as a missed medical diagnosis. Mr. Jacobs, My staff tells me that since you have been in the acting role leading the VBA, that you have made a point of being more collaborative with them and other congressional staff. I appreciate that effort, and I look forward to hearing how you will make certain veterans are getting the benefits they deserve in a timely manner, how you would position the VBA to provide more positive, measurable outcomes for veterans in the future, and how you will bring the VBA bureaucracy together to work with VBA partners to put the customer first. I thank you. I thank you for your interest in serving our country. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moran. I now recognize Senator Murray for the purpose of introduction of the nominee.
Thank you very much, Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, members of this committee. It is my privilege to introduce Joshua Jacobs, President Biden's nominee to serve as Undersecretary for Benefits at the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. And I'm pleased to welcome his family here today, his parents, Linda and Richard, his wife Julia, and their children Yael, Amir, and Laura. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Jacobs is an exceptionally qualified pick to fill this role. He will work day in and day out to make sure our nation lives up to its obligation to take care of our veterans. And I should know, because that's exactly what he did when he worked in my office back in the day. Joshua came to work every day focused on Washington State veterans and their families and helped prepare the VA for an influx of veterans, expand clinics and facilities, and make sure veterans had the services they need to transition to civilian life, especially when it comes to employment. That track record is why I was thrilled to have him return to work for me as Deputy Staff Director of this committee later on when I became chair. He helped lead our efforts to get veterans more mental health services, expand support and service for women veterans, and ensure veterans had a seamless transition from the DoD to the VA, where too often, as we know, service members and veterans faced too much red tape and VA faced too little accountability. Given his drive back then, it is no surprise to me the work he has done since shows his deep commitment to serving those who served our nation and why he is such an inspired choice for this role. When Mr. Jacobs was a senior advisor to the Office of the VA Secretary under President Obama, he was awarded the Secretary's Meritorious Service Award. When President Biden was elected, he was chosen to serve on the incoming administration's VA transition team. After Mr. Jacobs returned to the department as a senior advisor in 2021, he improved its decision-making process by establishing and leading the new Evidence-Based Policy Council and developing a new interagency policy development process to coordinate and implement more than 50 interagency policy efforts. As the senior advisor for policy performing the delegable duties of the Undersecretary for Benefits, Mr. Jacobs has taken on the enormous task of coordinating a team of 25,000 people from 56 regional offices, processing centers, and headquarters as they work to manage over $100 billion in benefits and make good on our promise to millions of veterans and their families. He knows full well how important a smoothly functioning VA is to the Americans who are relying on the benefits our nation promised them. And I have no doubt he will go to work every day determined to make sure our nation lives up to its promises. I know Mr. Jacobs, who happens to be a Washington State native, and his family is here today from there, and graduate of the University of Washington, will do great work for America's veterans as Undersecretary of Benefits. I'm very proud to support his nomination. I look forward to working with him once he's confirmed.
Thank you, Senator Murray, for the introduction. Mr. Jacobs, I'd ask you to stand and raise your right hand. Do you, Joshua Jacobs, solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give before the United States Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Let the record show that the nominee answered in the affirmative. Mr. Jacobs, you have time for your opening statement now. I would ask, take as long as you need, but try to keep it to 5 minutes.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Well, Chairman Tester, Ranking Member Moran, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to testify before you today. And Senator Murray, thank you for your kind introduction and for providing me with my first opportunity to work on behalf of veterans, as well as for your own lifetime of advocacy on behalf of veterans and their families. Yours is a standard I strive to meet every day. I'm honored and humbled by the opportunity, if confirmed, to serve veterans as the Undersecretary for Benefits at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I'm grateful to President Biden, Secretary McDonough, and Deputy Secretary Remy for their trust. I'd first like to recognize some of the family, friends, colleagues, and mentors who've supported me. I want to thank my parents, Richard and Linda, for a lifetime of support and for teaching me to always do my best and to do good for others. I want to thank my wife, Julia, and our 3 kids, Yael, Zev, and Amir. There's no way I could do my job without their endless support, their love, and their patience. I'd also like to recognize my grandpa, Mel Jacobs, or Papa. Papa served in the Army during World War II, and VA education benefits let him pursue his educational and career goals and provide for his family. Those are just a few of the generous people who've helped guide my life, both professionally and personally, and I'm indebted to them and so many more. I appreciate how significant the responsibilities of the Undersecretary for Benefits are. Over the last 15 years, I've dedicated myself to advocating and advancing policies and implementing solutions that help improve the lives of veterans. As I noted, I had the good fortune of working for Senator Murray for nearly a decade, and I learned the importance and the kind of impact veteran advocacy can have, and the value of practical solutions that ensure government solves problems rather than creating them. During my time as Deputy Staff Director, I worked for the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. I worked shoulder to shoulder with members and staff from both parties and veteran service organizations to provide the critical oversight and enact legislation that improved benefits and services for veterans. So I understand and I deeply respect this committee's dedication and the spirit of cooperation to get the job done right for veterans. And if confirmed, I look forward to working collaboratively with each of you as a proud alumnus of this committee. In addition to my work in the Senate, I've had the privilege of working at VA on 3 separate occasions. During my first tour at VA, I served in the Office of Congressional and Legislative Affairs, where I learned the importance of open and transparent engagement between VA and Congress. And I saw firsthand how effective engagement and oversight leads to better outcomes for veterans. During my second time at VA as Senior Advisor for Benefits, the disability claims backlog was near its peak. Working with VBA, we implemented a series of solutions that helped drive down the backlog by 90%. That experience taught me to appreciate the enormous scope and scale of the challenges VA faces in delivering benefits and the dedication it takes for employees to accomplish this noble mission. And during my current tenure at VA, I first served as Senior Advisor for Policy and helped develop an enterprise governance model to drive integrated decision-making and execution across VA. I also helped expedite the development, review, and approval of 2 regulations that added asthma, rhinitis, sinusitis, and 9 rare respiratory cancers to the list of presumed service-connected disabilities due to military environmental toxic exposure. And for the past 6 months, I've served as Senior Advisor for Policy, performing the delegable duties of the Undersecretary for Benefits. In this current role, I've worked to ensure VBA continues providing quality and timely benefits and services to the veterans, family members, caregivers, and survivors we're privileged to serve, delivering more benefits to more veterans and survivors more quickly and accurately than ever before. Today, the benefits and services delivered by the more than 25,000 talented and hardworking VBA employees, over half of whom are veterans themselves, not only help fulfill the promise of a grateful nation, but also empower veterans to be homeowners, to pursue further education and training, and to live healthier and more prosperous lives, to help them thrive, not just survive. And I'm proud to say, because of VBA's people and their hard work, last fiscal year, VBA processed a record number of claims, and we're on track to break that record this year for veterans. If confirmed, I look forward to continuing this work, especially as we receive and process claims from generations of veterans seeking benefits relating to toxic exposures under the Bipartisan PACT Act, which Congress passed last year. I will fight every day to ensure veterans and their families receive timely claims decisions and access to crucial VBA programs. And I will also continue focusing on increased transparency, better collaboration, and keeping veterans at the center of everything we do. As former VA Administrator Omar Bradley once reminded us, we're dealing with veterans, not procedures, with their problems, not ours. Our country's obligation to those who've served is one I know that we all share. And if confirmed, I will do everything I can to continue to be a fierce advocate for veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. Thank you again for considering my nomination. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you for your statement. Before I yield my time to Senator Murray, I would just say it's good to have your family here, and I just want to know if the kids are enjoying themselves.
Do they look-
Senator Murray.
They're glad to be here to visit and all those things, I'm sure. Thank you so much, and it is great to see you back here. And let me just start with the fact that the Veterans Benefits Administration is really experiencing a backlog of claims. We talked about this last night, which I know really got worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then, of course, with the passage of the PACT Act last year, the number of veterans seeking benefits is only going to rise. So I wanted to ask you, if confirmed, what are you going to do to make sure that veterans are receiving timely responses to their claims?
Senator Murray, thank you very much for that question. When I was here about 10 years ago as a senior advisor for benefits, I was here when General Hickey led the transformation through a series of people, process, technology transformational efforts to include moving from a paper to a paperless process. We're building on that foundation that's been laid. We're driving new people, process, technology solutions, and we're importantly focusing on both the veteran and the employee experience. So number one, with people, we are undertaking a significant hiring expansion. Over the last year, we've hired an additional 2,000 employees. Thanks to the PACT Act, we're able to hire another 1,900, of which we've been able to bring on board about 65%. Just this past week, we had 3 separate hiring fairs. We had hundreds of people in St. Petersburg, Florida, Waco, Texas, and Los Angeles, and we were able to make hundreds of job offers as a result of those job fairs. We're continuing that effort. We're also continuing to invest in training so that as the new employees come in, that they're brought up to speed and they're able to make timely and accurate decisions. The second piece is focused on process. We're concerned about how we can bring more efficiency to the process. And overdevelopment is one of the main concerns we have. We don't want to send veterans out to get an exam if they don't need it. That takes time away from their busy lives, potentially results in them losing income. So we're looking at efforts like overdevelopment. And then third, I would add, we're also employing technology. So we're in the early stages of leveraging automated decision support, but I think this is the real potential game changer as we move forward. It's going to give our employees more tools to make more decisions more quickly, accurately, and equitably across the system, and I think it'll help us ensure that we don't have to linearly increase employee staffing to meet the growing demand.
Okay, excellent. The VA Office of Inspector General and Government Accountability Office have issued several reports over the last couple of years detailing the mishandling of veterans' military sexual trauma claims. In a 2021 report, the Inspector General estimated that about 57% of denied claims related to MST were not processed correctly. Talk to us about what plans you have to work on the MST claims to make sure that veterans are receiving the care that they deserve.
Yeah, I really appreciate you raising that question and your leadership on this issue. MST claims are some of the most horrific issues that we have to deal with. We have to deal with them with the sensitivity and the urgency that they demand, and do so in an appropriate manner. One of the things that we've done to try to improve the accuracy and the consistency of our decisions is by consolidating the processing of those individual claims. They are quite complex, and oftentimes it's hard for the veteran to provide sufficient evidence for us to make a decision. So we're working to ensure that we have our most qualified, experienced staff who can solely focus on MST. And second, we're also going to be looking at the broader evidentiary standards to understand how we can make it easier for veterans and operate with sensitivity so we don't re-traumatize veterans as they're going through this process.
Okay, I'll be following this closely, so look forward to hearing more from you as you go through that. And finally, let me just say something. You won't be surprised to hear that there are 2 million women veterans living in the United States today, and they are the fastest growing demographic. This is something I've long cared about, but I have to say I'm still hearing from a lot of women veterans that they're not aware of or taking advantage of the benefits they've earned. How do we deal with that?
I think it's a really important question, and we need to do more. Since I've come into this organization back in 2021, I've observed that VA is more forward-leaning with respect to outreach. We're getting the word out. We're trying to partner with veteran service organizations, with state departments of Veterans Affairs, with county veteran service organizations, with the Center for Women Veterans. And importantly, we need to make sure that we're listening. We're asking questions, we're listening to women veterans, and we're responding. Because the tools that we use to provide information and support to certain parts of the veteran population may not work here. So we're partnering with the Veteran Experience Office to apply human-centered design and make sure that we take those insights and we use them to inform how we provide outreach and connect female veterans with the support and the services that they've earned.
Thank you very much. I look forward to supporting this nomination, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your consideration.
Yep. Senator Moran.
Mr. Jacobs, the Office of Legal Counsel at the Department of Justice issued an opinion letter in 2017 stating that oversight requests from, quote, individual members of Congress, including ranking minority members, do not trigger any obligation to accommodate congressional needs. Despite that DOJ opinion on this matter, will you commit to accommodating congressional oversight requests regardless of party affiliation or committee status of the member making the request?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. In working with the VA, this committee frequently requests data, materials, and policy views from the department to inform our oversight and legislative work. Responses to these inquiries frequently get cleared through the Office of the Undersecretaries, and unfortunately, that process often involves time delays and keeps us from receiving a timely response. If you are confirmed, how will you prioritize responses to this committee to make certain we have the information we need to serve veterans in a timely manner? I have no doubt you will answer this question to my satisfaction as a former staff member of this committee.
Well, Senator, as you rightly indicated, I have shared your frustration over the past 15 years with both untimely and insufficient responses from the department. I would also say that since I've been in this role over the last 6 months, I've probably contributed to the timeline delays because the answers that have come to me have been unsatisfactory. I don't think that they've responded directly to the questions that have been asked. So oftentimes I go back and I work with the team to make sure that we revise the answer to appropriately address it. But you know, as a former Senate staffer, I know that it's critical we have transparent, ongoing, and timely deliberations and communications. So I will promise, if confirmed, to make it a priority to improve both the quality and the timeliness of our responses to your inquiries.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobs, when we met earlier this week, I told you that often what I know of the circumstances of veterans and their VA experience comes to me from Kansas veterans through casework. In addition to that, through conversations, emails, but it's generally people who are raising a problem, an experience they've had with the Department of Veterans Affairs. One such veteran traveled 65 miles each way for a contract disability exam as part of his disability benefits claim. The contract examiner is supposed to provide a mileage reimbursement for that travel, but after 5 months, multiple phone calls and multiple checks proposal supposedly being sent, this veteran does still not have his reimbursement or any answer. What should this process look like from the veteran's experience, and where is the disconnect between VBA and the regional offices and the examination contractors?
Well, Senator, it's an excellent point that you raised, and I appreciated our conversation in your office. I would start by saying that veterans shouldn't have to go to their member of Congress to get their issues resolved. That is, to me, unacceptable, and it's something that we need to fix. But I'm glad that they do have that recourse. Second, I would say that as we look at the types of issues that are raised through caseworkers, I think that gives us an opportunity to not only fix the issue at the local level, so our regional offices should be working closely with each of your caseworkers, but we also have an opportunity to identify trends that we should be addressing at the national level and trying to respond and remediate them if necessary. In the particular case of the veteran that you just explained, I would ask if it would be possible to get the information so I can personally look into that and take care of it. and make sure that any broader systemic issues that are underlying it are also addressed.
I would welcome that providing that information to you, and I appreciate your response indicating that one case is often more than just one veteran who's experienced the same circumstance. I've heard from my staff who work for veterans in our office and veterans in Kansas about their frustrations of receiving notices that claims are, let me say that sentence better, that the frustration arises from the veteran receiving a notice. The notice indicates that their claims are, quote, ready for decision. However, the veteran still does not receive a final decision for months on end. So in a sense, we're building up the expectation. They bring to me, I've got this notice that says it's ready for decision, but nothing has happened. Especially now with the PACT Act on top of the other claims, it is more important than ever to properly notify veterans about their pending claims and where they are in the process. If confirmed, how will you improve these communications with veterans as they await a decision on their claim, as well as work with your regional offices to ensure veterans are receiving timely and accurate information about their claims in the process of receiving a final determination?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the question. I think the reason we have so many claims, and it's out of balance right now in this ready for decision cycle, is it's a byproduct in part of us catching up from the work coming out of COVID, where we were able to work through a number of claims. We had to pause a bit because of the supply chain challenges, not being able to get veterans safely to C&P examiners or obtain their records. And so we've got this kind of pig in a python type of challenge, but that doesn't matter to the veteran. That's a context, right? What matters to the veteran is that they understand where their claim is and that they understand what's happening. I agree that there are challenges with the way that we categorize the nomenclature of ready for decision, because in many cases it is in fact not ready for decision. So one of the key things that we are going to be working on, and I will pay significant attention to if confirmed, is focusing on how we improve the communications to manage expectations. It's confusing for veterans. It's not only the categorization of ready for decision, but our notification letters. I was in Philadelphia at our regional office, and I was listening into one of the call center agents. Got a call from a veteran. He was trying to decipher what this letter meant for him. These letters are written for lawyers, by lawyers. We've got to change that so that veterans actually understand what's happening. And one of the key actions coming out of a PACT Act offsite we held in December, which a number of your staff attended, is a concerted effort to improve how we communicate status and through multiple channels, not only through the app, through the website, but also through the letters. And then finally, I would add that we also just have to kind of buckle down and get those claims decided and decisions to the veteran.
I guess that's a good point, is that the decision is really what they want, not the notice.
Correct.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, thank you. You're going to lose me momentarily. While Mr. Jacobs is hugely important, I have to go see that we pass a resolution related to the Chiefs' success in the Super Bowl. So you will miss me for a portion of the remainder of your hearing.
We absolutely will miss you, Senator Moran, especially the compliments. I'm going to miss those, but thank you very much. Thank you. Look, there's a couple things that came to mind as you were answering questions. The first one was that you drew back some of the answers and actually read them and made sure they addressed the questions. I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of folks that serve here in the halls of Congress that I think take pride in the fact of not answering questions. And the truth is that you're able to do that is really important. And the second thing that stood out was the fact that you want to put it in language that people can understand, not an attorney. And I can't thank you enough for both those. I hope you never forget that during your service because it's really important. We should all also fundamentally agree that veterans should not have to pay for their VA, to get their VA benefits. That's why we all need to work together to make sure that the application and receiving those benefits are as user-friendly, veteran-friendly as possible. In cases where a veteran has questions or needs assistance, we look to a number of different folks, the VSOs, the County Veteran Service Officers, accredited by the VA and held to a standard of ethics to assist the veterans in filing those claims. Do you agree that veterans should not have to pay for assistance in filing their claims?
Mr. Chairman, I think veterans have earned these benefits, and they shouldn't have to pay someone to help them get them.
So the question here is, what are you going to do to better educate veterans of the resources that are available to them to help them file the claims or get other assistance from the VA?
Yeah. Let me start by just acknowledging that the claims process is confusing, it's complicated, and at times it's perceived as adversarial. We're working to change that. One of the ways that we're working to do that, and if confirmed, I will double down and continue to do a whole lot more, is by doing proactive outreach. In December, we did National PACT Act awareness events across the country. I was in Seattle, and we had claims clinics. We had VBA staff on site, advertised, a whole lot of veterans came in, we helped them file their claims. We're doing that again next month across the country. We need to do more of that, but we can't do it ourselves. We have to do it in partnership with VSOs, with county veteran service officers, with state departments of Veterans Affairs. The second piece that I think have to do is we have to drive more focus on the veteran experience, because veterans often don't know about the process, and when they don't know about the process and they don't know what to look out for in terms of predatory actors, they can make the wrong decision. So we need to continue to proactively get information out so that they have resources that are going to help them for free.
Super. The Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson PACT Act has been referenced several times during this hearing. It is a big expansion of benefits in health care for our folks, and we continue to see things that bounce up that I don't think are happening by coincidence, like the blood cancers at Malmstrom Air Force Base that was talked about a month ago. So this thing is going to continue to be an issue for you once you're confirmed. I hope you are confirmed. So the questions fall in a couple different buckets here. What progress has VBA made with implementing the PACT Act's presumptive decision-making framework to identify the need for new presumptive exposures?
Mr. Chairman, we're starting on a foundation that was laid prior to passage of the PACT Act. I referenced in my opening statement that the process we use to establish the asthma, rhinitis, sinusitis, as well as the 9 rare respiratory cancers. We're building on that with the new authorities that were provided to us in the PACT Act, to include a requirement that we formally publish in the Federal Register a list of the conditions that we will evaluate to consider potential establishment of a presumptive service connection. So our team, it's a combination of VHA and VBA experts, are working to finalize that list and then get ready to publish it into the Federal Register. And I think the benefit of that is we get other people grading our homework, and if we're not including the right conditions, people have an opportunity to tell us, and we have an opportunity to make adjustments. Second piece I would add is we also are moving forward, and we're not grading our own homework, so we're going to have the national academies, as required under the PACT Act, formally review the decision-making framework. And so as we move forward and we work to implement it, we'll have an opportunity to have that external subject matter review to inform whether or not we need to continue as designed or make adjustments.
Thank you. As of Monday, the claims inventory was 743,000, and the backlog's about 194,000. What is VBA's claims projection over the next 5 years, and how has the VBA prepared to address the increases?
Yeah. We have to date received a little more than 300,000 PACT Act claims since the bill was signed into law on August 10th. We're expecting about 700,000 PACT claims in this fiscal year, and upwards of 5 million total, both PACT and non-PACT, as we move forward. And so the calculations fluctuate depending on certain assumptions, but the bottom line is we're going to see a significant increase in the number of claims filed, because for the first time ever, the PACT Act is allowing us to provide benefits to generations of veterans who haven't been able to get those benefits under law. And so what we're doing to prepare is we are working through a robust people, process, technology solution that includes increased hiring, expanded training, process improvements and efficiencies, and then technology. And I think the technology piece is really going to be the game changer moving forward. It's still in the early stages. We need to verify, validate, and graduate it before we expand it more broadly across the system. And we, importantly, need to ensure that the veterans we serve, the members of Congress who provide oversight, and the employees who use that system have trust that it will provide the right decisions at the right time.
My last question before I turn over to Senator Hassan actually follows on with what Senator Moran had asked earlier, and that is, do we have your commitment to provide regular, accurate metrics as it relates to the claims backlog as well as PACT Act claims backlog?
Mr. Chairman, you have my commitment,
Okay.
if confirmed, yes.
Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to you and Ranking Member Moran for this nomination hearing. And Mr. Jacobs, thank you for your willingness to serve. I want to start by just following up on an issue similar to the one that Senator Moran raised about delays in disability claims. Recently, I've heard stories from veterans about how far they have to travel for their compensation and pension claim examinations and the stress that that puts on them. Leon Rideout, the VFW commander in New Hampshire, was recently scheduled for a compensation and pension claim exam 4 hours away in New York. Attending this exam would have forced him to miss a full day of work. He couldn't attend, and now he may be forced to wait even longer to get his exam. Exams that are far away can be even more burdensome, obviously, for veterans who have a condition that impedes their ability to travel long distances. So how do you plan to address this challenge and schedule veterans at the facility that is closest and most convenient for them to travel to?
Senator, thanks very much for raising that important issue. This is a key part of the veteran experience. This is oftentimes the only time a veteran will engage with someone representing VBA, because the majority of our staff are working in offices at home in front of a computer and not directly engaging face-to-face. And so it's often, it'll indicate whether they want to continue with the process and pursue the other earned benefits that they have or not, and lose trust. What we're doing to address specifically the issue of drive time is working with our 4 vendors. The majority of the CMP exams we do are done by vendor companies, and enforcing certain contractual standards with respect to timeliness and length of distance. Where they're falling short, they then have to pay penalties. But I think what we also have to do, and first and foremost, is make sure that the veteran actually needs the exam. Yes. We need to check and make sure if there's sufficient evidence already in their file, we shouldn't be sending a veteran to go get that exam. Right. And so if you have an example of the particular veteran you mentioned, I'd love to look into it, follow up, understand what happened, figure out how to resolve it, and also identify the broader system issues.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and we will follow up with you. I want to touch now on an education benefits issue. Members of the National Guard and Reserve make up more than 40% of the United States Armed Forces. As you know, members of the Reserve component can qualify for VA education benefits, but they can also be called up to active duty at any moment. Their service is obviously really important to our nation and to our security, but it may also disrupt their education and lead to service members not receiving school credit and wasting tuition dollars because their education has been interrupted. So if confirmed, what will you do to support members of the Reserve component and ensure that they can take full advantage of their education benefits?
Senator, this is actually an issue I'm quite interested in, and I'm glad that you raised it. I think the VA has historically, and VBA specifically, has focused on the digital GI Bill. So we focused on the modernization of our IT infrastructure, and we've appropriately focused on preserving the integrity of the GI Bill.
Right.
But we haven't done enough to focus on ensuring we're supporting the majority of veterans who are using their benefits and giving them the leg up to advance their careers. So what I would love to do is work with your office. I'm actually pulling together a roundtable filled with student veterans, schools, and employers to explore how we can identify additional ways to support veterans there. I know that there are certain authorities that can help veterans that are called back up to active duty to preserve some of their education benefits, but we need to do a whole lot more, and if confirmed, I'd love to work with you.
No, I'd look forward to that too. I want to talk a little bit about the transition process, and I expect that you have heard a great deal from committee members and will continue about that. Every year, approximately 200,000 service members make the complex and difficult transition from military service to civilian life. Last year, I worked to get the Solid Start Act passed into law, and I continue to believe that that program is essential to ensuring that veterans are aware of their benefits immediately after separation. But we still need to do more for these veterans in these early years. How do you plan to prioritize the needs of transitioning service members to ensure that they're receiving information and access to VA benefits that they've earned, they deserve, and can make a real difference, obviously, in their next chapter?
Well, first, let me just thank you for your leadership on Solid Start. This is a really impactful program. I think GAO highlighted that in a recent report, but it also highlighted we've got some work to do in better communicating with younger transitioning service members, and we importantly have to partner with VSOs to make sure that we're tailoring the program and the outreach to meet their needs. I think one of the most important things we can do here is not come up with a 3,000-mile screwdriver with kind of the ideas that we think are best from our seats in DC, but to actually go and talk to the transitioning service members. And so partnering with the Veteran Experience Office, we're leading an interagency effort to perform human-centered design, where we're having interviews with transitioning service members and their families, and then taking the insights along that transition journey to identify the pain points, the moments that matter, and then use that to drive improvements. We have multiple interagency partners involved, and so we need to deconflict this. We need to make sure that we're designing and implementing support to transitioning service members that's designed around their needs and not our organizational structure.
Okay, well, I would appreciate learning more about that effort, working with you on it. One of the things I'm also aware of, and I think has been highlighted in other work that you all have done, when I talk to veterans, women veterans in particular, I think find the transition process not really necessarily suited to their needs. So it's one of the things that we need to focus on too. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Hassan. I want to thank you, Joshua Jacobs. We've had a number of folks in front of this committee for confirmation. I don't know that anybody's done any better than you as far as knowing the subject area and knowing the job and answering the questions forthright and straightforward, and I want to thank you for that. Normally, when you say there's not a lot of folks here, you think, well, the job isn't that important. I don't think that's the case at all. I think the fact that you've worked at this job, that you've done your work on the Hill, talking to folks, and that we're incredibly busy right now is why they aren't here. And the other thing is, and I'll step out on a limb and say this, if you were controversial, they'd been here. Okay, so that's a good sign. I would ask that any post-hearing questions be sent to the clerk no later than 5 p.m. tomorrow. I'm going to do my best to try to get you confirmed as soon as possible. And with that, this hearing is adjourned.